must start, each time we invite economists, part of the challenge of economists is that they separate the politics from the economics, isn't it? And then we behave as if the economics operates without the politics. I think the reality is that, the politics affects the economics, and the economics affects the politics. And hence, the political economy approach can help us really unravel and understand the issues that we are discussing. I want to observe at the outset that, ladies and gentlemen, Zimbabwe is a broken country. The state is broken. The opposition is broken. The civil society is broken. We are highly polarized. So for us to move forward as a country, we need to recognize where we are, that we can't move when we are broken. First of all, we need to bring the pieces together. I think that is so critical if we are to move forward. The challenge with where we are at the moment is that we have reduced their problems to technocratic solutions. We bring in a professor from Oxford, and we give him a huge burden to turn around the economy. And when the professor arrives, he wants to show that he's a professor. He understands issues. And he wants to come up with immediate answers to the problems. But here is the challenge. The challenge is basically that where we are, there will be trade-offs in terms of any policy that we come up with. As a result, we need a stakeholder approach, a consultative approach. So we can't move as a country unless and until we address the issue of nation building. We did a book last year, some of you saw it, on developmental states. What is interesting about developmental state is the ability of the state to bring about cohesiveness within the state and extend that cohesiveness beyond the state, such that the national development agenda is seized voluntarily by the key stakeholders as a hegemonic national project. Almost like akin to what happened during the liberation struggle, when people were mobilized. They were so seized with the fight. They say that the interesting thing about Japan after the Second World War is that Japan did not demobilize. It simply remobilized its people from the war to the economy, to the extent that the cohesion that was there allowed the country to move without any tensions, without any fights. So the challenge in Zimbabwe, when we are broken as we are, is what we are hearing now. For example, with respect to the fiscal recommendation, the minister has announced it's supposed to operate from the 1st of October, isn't it? And now we're saying, by the way, why not keep it and all those things? But he has what? He has announced. That's the folly of announcing before consultations. So as a way forward, we need first of all to build nation building, to come up with nation building. I would say, if I was a minister, guys, external interlocutors, give us a bit of time. We want to talk to each other as Zimbabweans. First of all, so that we understand where we are. There's no common understanding of where we are. Neither is there a common understanding of where we want to go. So we need, first of all, that process of nation building and cohesion building, so that we all understand where we are. And once we agree, we all put our shoulders on the block and move as a country. I think this is the most important starting point that I want to make, which ties up with some of the observations, the critiques, isn't, on some of the fiscal recommendations. Then secondly, I just want to read to you an observation that was made in 1919 by Keynes, Maynard Keynes. He says, writing the economic consequences of the peace, he says, and I quote, "Lenin was right. There is no subtler, no surer means of overturning the existing basis of society than to debauch the currency. The process engages all the hidden forces of economic law on the side of destruction, and does it in a manner which not one man in a million is able to diagnose." I think we heard this, isn't it? Where the currency was debauched. We had the Zim dollar, isn't it? Before 2009. And we destroyed it through the same processes that we're witnessing right now. It's not new. It's the very same processes of fiscal mismanagement that resulted in the Zim dollar basically becoming meaningless. And then we moved from the Zim dollar to the multi-currency. As if the multi-currency could not be debauched. During the tenure of the GNU, I think it's very clear from the fiscal statement by the minister, he did something quite interesting in the sense that he gave us a chronological sequence of this deficit. It did not just start during the GNU, for all his faults, its mantra or dictum was, you eat what you kill. Cash budgeting. You don't spend that which you don't have. So as a result, when one party government came into power in 2013, basically that started the challenges again, isn't it? We went back again to our old ways. It's like a dog now eating its what? So went back, that's where now the minister has highlighted that when in 2013 the government took over, there was only a domestic debt of 275 million. But now it's 9.5 billion. There was no domestic debt to talk about. It had been destroyed through hyperinflation. But all of a sudden, we've got a huge domestic debt. And here is the catch. Last year, the domestic debt was what? Around 6 billion, isn't it? Around 5 billion. So now if it's 9.5, so it means during the new dispensation period, we have actually acquired a debt of what? More than 5.5 billion within just this short space of time. And if you read the IMF Article 4 consultation report, it actually warned the government that there is a challenge with how you are managing the debt. You are coming into untransparent and unaccountable projects, isn't it? With the Chinese, for instance. I mean, which are debt instruments. So it's not surprising that we have actually expanded the debt even during the tenure, when we are saying we are in a what? In a new dispensation. So the practices of the past have continued now to be implemented. So in essence, if you look at a very interesting statistic that I saw in the 2016 budget, the minister said something quite profound in terms of the genesis or source of the budget deficit. He says, because if you look at the trend, the budget deficit was around minus 0.1% of GDP around 2013. And then around 2015, it was still around 3%. And then all of a sudden, it explodes. There's a spike in 2016, isn't it? To about 9% of GDP. What happened then? The Minister of Finance, the former minister, put it very, very clearly. He says, government basically in July 2015 pushed the Reserve Bank Debt Assumption Act, adopted the Reserve. You remember the Reserve Bank debt of 1.35 billion. The mechanization program, the tractors, the all those things. So they actually took over that debt. And that when they took over that debt, it created real challenges, isn't it? It destabilized the whole macroeconomic framework. And what is very, very critical, before then, the GNU had agreed that the principle is that those that benefited must pay. I was on the board of the Central Bank up to 2013, and that was the position we took. And I remember vividly the then governor assuring us that they had every address of the recipients of those, and hence everyone was supposed to pay those that benefited. But now we are saying, Ashu, well, here we are in a very neutral way. We've got a budget deficit as it came from nowhere. This is the reality, guys, and we need to do something. It's very painful, but we all have to take our responsibility. I want to say that the time has come for citizenry to demand things, to make the government accountable. We can't stand here and say a debt that we know where it came from, and we know who benefited from it. I mean, the minister is clearly saying that the debt now, total debt is 16.9. It's 16.9 billion. And the minister in himself is saying it's 16.9 billion now, the debt isn't, the total debt. And we can't. So we need to go through an austerity program. And they launched it, isn't it? It was approved by cabinet. How many people can you raise your hands that have seen the austerity or stabilization and fiscal stabilization program? It was adopted 2 days ago, isn't it? By cabinet. And it's now ready to be launched, they've told us. We are being carried in the sack. This is the reality. Nothing about us without us. We need to know where we are going. We are a broken country. We have got a huge trust and confidence deficit in this country. So we can't move as if there is no confidence and trust deficit in this country. So we can't just run. We are in a minefield. If you are in a minefield, don't run like what we are trying to do. You have to treat very carefully. So that's my first challenge in terms of how we are doing business. It's very clear, and the minister says in the same budget, he says of the 2.1 billion treasury bills and bonds issued in 2016, only 356 million, 17%, mark that, 17%, was to finance the budget deficit. With 1.7 billion US dollars, 81% for outstanding legacy debt. And the legacy debt basically is the Reserve Bank, mainly the Reserve Bank. So even the deficit itself, that's where the printing is going to cover that hole. So essentially, why should we universalize the pain? When we know, if you are running a company, you need to follow your debtors, isn't it? We know who the debtors are, the people that benefited. So we can't really say now every Zimbabwean must shoulder this burden. Then let me come very quickly as I conclude to the observations that Ashok made, and I agree on the monetary policy, where basically they bifurcated, isn't it? They separated the two accounts. And my two discussants and presenter have actually acknowledged that in the first instance, government acknowledged that these are not the same. And hence they need to separate. But here for me is the crunch. Having said that, they go on to say that, however, the exchange rate is to 1 to 1. So what does that mean? It simply means that Ashok has got access to Nostro FCA, isn't it? He's got access to external funding. And my colleague Svelani is on the RTGS FCA, which is not which you can call whatever you want, as Ashok rightly pointed out. So the reality now is Gresham's law will come to apply. When you have two currencies operating at the same time, there's good currency and bad currency. Guess he wants what he has. Because he can't pay school fees outside the country for his son at UCT using the RTGS FCA. So he wants to get what Ashok has. Ashok realizes there is an opportunity for arbitrage. So he basically goes to the bank, collects part of his money, 1,000, and he sells it on the parallel market. So this is not going to sort out the problem of the parallel market. Simply because the parallel market is a problem of demand and supply. There is no supply of foreign currency, and it's not going to be addressed through this measure. So that's the challenge. Gresham's law will apply. Everyone will chase the good money. Everyone will want this FCA, this Nostro FCA. And the price of that Nostro FCA will actually rise. And hence will continue to have this problem, which will flow into importers and all those things, and continue to wreak havoc in terms of inflation. So this does not really solve the problem. And here is the other second issue that I want to and that's where I disagree with Ashok, where you said, guys, whether you like it or not, it's called an RTGS, it has no value. But let's go back to the social contract when we dollarized, when we went for multi-currencies. We said, guys, we're now using multi-currency, it's 1 to 1. That's the agreement, social contract we had with our government. And when we say 1 to 1, it means what I put into the bank then is equal to 1. It's not my problem now that you have created all this mess. And now you say, come on, guys, let's share its pain. No gain without pain. I think that is ridiculous. That is the height of incredulity. It's insanity to begin to ask everybody to share in a pain, when in fact we know basically that we are cheating. I was on the Presidential Commission on Insurance and Pensions, where people were prejudiced of their insurance and the pensions, isn't it? Most of you suffered that prejudice. And also we experienced whatever Zimbabwean dollar balances that were in the bank, they were zeroized, isn't it? They became zero. And then in 2015, when we decided to demonetize, the government said, now we want to use an exchange rate so that we can recompense you. And what exchange rate did they use? They used a parallel UN exchange rate of $35 quadrillion to the US. So in essence, government using an illegal exchange rate simply because they didn't want to pay. In the end, they just had to pay $5 into each and every one of you's account, isn't it? So right now we are in a similar situation, and you didn't talk about it now. How am I going to be compensated now with this RTGS? I've now been declared you belong to this category. And by the way, let's face it from a humane point of view. How many people have got such access? The majority of our people, 68% are in the rural areas. And much of this economy is now informalized. 94.5% of all jobs are now informal. So what we are saying now is that all those people now belong to this bad money. And the few, we are creating an aristocracy, an elite society, where there is a few that have got access and they can arbitrage. They can continue now playing the game on the parallel exchange, so that the majority who are clamoring for that limited scarce exchange. So the issue of production has to be addressed. Zimbabwe is suffering from a deficit of production and productivity. We need to harness and to really, come up with a social contract. That's the way I'll conclude. We need a social contract where everyone sits around the table. You don't, we all sit and discuss how we are going to move. And there's a framework already. There's a tripartite negotiating forum bill, TNF bill, some of you know it. And that is a framework, a statutory body like NED, like in South Africa, for dialogue. So if I was President Mnangagwa, I would actually use it instead of saying, guys, look here. If you don't want to board the bus, that's your problem. Shauri yako. We are moving, the bus is not stopping. So that's not leadership. Leadership under a broken country implies as a leader, you have to be at the back and ensure that everyone is in front of you. Everyone is moving. So if we say now, I'm ahead of everyone, and then after a kilometer or so, you look around, there's no one. Like what we did, 2 decades of deep economy, isn't it? Of destruction of the economy since 1997. And nobody was looking back to see whether there was someone, the people were behind. And you eventually look, you see no one is behind you. And then you say, sorry guys, now it's a new dispensation. If it's a new dispensation, we need a radical change. And part of the challenge is, in conclusion, I'm worried because I was on this commission on insurance and pensions. I'm trying to show you that some of the things haven't changed. Found it interesting to listen to one senior government official speaking on radio. He said, we are talking a lot about the new dispensation, but the problem is that the mindsets are not changing quickly enough. So essentially, I want to give you an example. We realized at NASA, and like any other ministry, a minister was given 100% control. It was silos, isn't it? If you're a minister of labor, all the public agencies, enterprises under you are yours. So NASA belonged to the minister of labor. So under the new dispensation, Priska Mfumida started by being the minister of labor. When she was pushed to tourism, the new minister of labor, in the same dispensation, fired the chairman of NASA, fired the general manager, Elizabeth Shitiga, and they want to bring in their own. It's the same old way of doing business. So essentially, we all know what is happening. I don't want to elaborate because I don't know who is here. Is there a good relationship, rapport? When you talk about state, there has to be cohesion. The police, the CIO, and the army. There's one group that says Chinunde Chedwich. No, when you say that, it's very empowering, isn't it, to the rest? Chinunde Chedwich, what does it mean? It means that this is our thing. It's one section of one arm of government saying that. So the rest you see now, you can't move, even when the state is broken, when the civil society is broken, when we are all broken the way we are. And then in conclusion, the 2% that was highlighted, you are now, the central bank has been promoting financial inclusion in recognition of the fact that the majority of the people are excluded, isn't it? All these people in the rural areas, all these people informal could not open formal bank accounts. So the idea now was to encourage them to also come in. And mind you, most of these people in the informal economy are not there because of choice. They are there because there's no more industry. There's no more economy. Now we go after them. They're exerting, isn't it? They're working so hard under subsistence conditions, isn't it? With very little capital, strenuous conditions to try and earn the little. And that guy, the little that he is earning, you now say, no, I've just competed because I'm a professor, that I can make 2.5 billion here, I can raise money. That can close that gap that we said is obscene, is odious debt, isn't it? I don't know what that debt is done. We're talking of 17, if it was a developmental state with 16.9 billion debt, I'm sure, guys, we would have gone places. Our infrastructure, the Africa Development Bank did a program, a report in 2011, where they estimated that we needed over 5 years, around 14 billion, isn't it, for infrastructure, to sort out the infrastructure. So with this debt, we would have sorted out the infrastructural deficit. But guess where we are? Then lastly, one of the issues, when we talk of fiscus, we're talking not just of expenditure. The discussion has tended to focus so much on expenditures. Let's look at the revenue side. I always argue that Zimbabwe does not have a problem of liquidity. The problem is of stewardship. Yes. There are resources, and we can't account for the resources. Can you imagine? A war president can stand up and say, oh yes, God was so kind, he gave us alluvial diamonds on the surface. We didn't have to do too much to get them. But guess what? We can't account for anything. They've gone. There's resources that could have made a difference. Look at how NASA, we did in our report, I think most of you have seen it because it's in the public domain. The good thing government has adopted the insurance and pensions report. We looked into this sector. Can't Countries like Singapore, a small city-state, with a population of 5.5 million, has got an insurance and pensions industry of 245 billion. Zimbabwe, with a population of 16 million, has got an insurance and pensions of 5 billion. And if you look at how we are managing it, it is all fragmented. The health aspects are under the Ministry of Health. The NASA, which is the mandatory, is under Ministry of Labor. Then the insurance is under IPEC, under Ministry of Finance. And look at how they are being managed. You remember the saga at Pismas, where one person was earning $540,000. I mean, look at how these resources have been used or abused. So in essence, look at how the government revenues have been fragmented over time into various statutory accounts. The Registrar General can collect money, which does not go into the consolidated revenue account. The police were collecting money on the roads, which was not going to the consolidated revenue fund. There's NARA on the roads, have been actually collecting toll gates. And guess what? You go to South Africa, how much do you pay per toll gate? 6 rand. Here in Zimbabwe, you pay $2. The person who is collecting 6 rand is mending their roads. The one who is collecting 28 rands per toll gate does not even sort out the. So in essence, we have got a challenge. We need also to fix the leakages. The former Minister of Finance indicated that we are losing 1.8 billion every year through illicit outflows. Organizations like Aphrodite came up with a number of 3 billion, isn't it? And these are issues that we need to deal with. We need to plug these leakages.